Okay, so now you've written down your thoughts for strategy. After everyone gets to share their thoughts, Julian Pratt will share a few more minutes. He's come prepared with some thoughts. Bill Batt is going to talk a bit about the land value maps, which I consider a key strategy for us because it's information drives action. I have a few thoughts, and that we're going to also form small groups so that you really get an opportunity to talk. You might form your small group around a strategic approach, say getting smart with media, publishing, all kinds of possibilities we'll come up with. Or just a group that feels compatible. So we're going to want to form these small groups. We can turn chairs in a small group circle in this room or back in that room behind here. So that's the plan, and then we'll have some kind of summary that will show our collective thinking on strategy. All right, so those who are ready with their 1 minute, if you could all just come up. There's 4 chairs. Start lining up with these 4 chairs. The one sitting on this chair will go first and so on. So don't be shy. Come on up to the front. Everybody who's prepared to speak for 1 minute, I'm asking you to come up. Now, we have 2 more seats up front. Okay.
I will offer 3 quick thoughts. First, empirical research studies to backstop our claims. Logic and reason will only go so far. Sometimes you need data. We can do the studies that show the validity of our ideas. Secondly, visual graphics that easily explain our philosophy of justice. That includes diagrams, supply and demand curves, GIS maps, any visual. They say a picture is 1,000 words. Lastly, short stories, anecdotes. Some people have called them elevator speeches. Let me give you just one quickie. People sometimes say, teach a man to fish, he'll eat for a day. Feed a man a fish, he'll eat for a day. Teach a man a fish, he'll eat forever. But there's a third part that we know. He has to have access to a fish pond. And a lot of people do not have access to that fish pond. That's it.
You sit down, please. So please keep moving, and others can come up and fill that 4th chair.
I think of us as trying to start a self-sustaining chain reaction. And I think that Jacob Schwartz has the most powerful strategy that I've seen for doing that. Another strategy that makes a lot of sense to me is to work through Findhorn to gain allies and people who will have experience of sharing the rent among themselves as a strategy. I have a contribution of my own which is different, and that is to work in the theoretical realm, to tie various details together, and to provide intellectually satisfying answers to theoretical objections. Thank you.
So many of you know that we're making a film at the moment called Taxing Question of Land, which will be online for free, and we want to promote it in workshops. It's got to be done, not just show it online and tell your friends to watch it, but actually run an event, a session which has a Q&A following the film. And further to that, to start thinking about ways that we can take the ideas into schools, for young people as well. You know, can we create a session that a 6-year-old can understand, that can be just playing with the ideas about what's fair, about what's going on, and they can go back to their parents and say, oh, today at school I did this session. You know, so finding ways to go into schools and into workshops and trying to engage with all ages to make it a more regular discussion at every stage. So that's what I think we should try and work on, and try and think creatively together about how to create workshops that will do this.
Hello. I would like to make 2 points. And the first point is that I know that a lot of people have said before, and I've heard it often, we have to focus on lobbying to the politicians, and the people, they're too stupid, and they only care about, only discuss stupid things, and they're never gonna understand it. But the thing is, at this moment, we have both the vested interests and the public opinion against us, and we won't get the vested interests in favor of us. So the politicians will never, ever, ever do something that is against both the vested interest and the public opinion. So we have to, I'm not saying we shouldn't keep lobbying politicians, but we just have to, how hard it may seem and how impossible it may seem and how much we have failed over the last 100 years, there's no other way than to convince the public. I just do not see another way. Without having a stronger support in the public and a recognition from the public of who we are and what we stand for, they will not listen to us. And the second point I want to make is that, I would not call myself a socialist, but I think there's one thing that we can learn from them, and that's the concept of comradeship. And I think we should all become comrades of each other, and I think we should work on our friendships and build friendships rather, and that can be with diversity of opinions, rather than fight with each other, because it's embarrassing, and we agree more with each other than with other people, so that is really something we have to work on. Thank you.
You said your name before you speak.
Okay, I am Kisia Gonzalez from Honduras and USA, and
Go ahead, keep going.
I wasn't even trying because the microphone was above my head. I have 2 suggestions to make, and I'm sharing this with you because it had worked for me. And I think 2 things are really very important. The very first one, as a messenger, you have to be truthful and believable. Meaning that if you're going to speak about something that you do not believe, you're going nowhere. So that means that in order to deliver the idea of LBT, we have to believe it that is an aspect that could make the changes, the social changes we want to see how to happen. If by any chance, because I have seen and heard some colleagues, and I say colleagues because we share these ideas, that they have the arrogance to disagree with Henry George. I think that is your right, but when you do so, you just not criticize, but offer the solution that thing that Henry George was missing. And the second part is talk to the group of people of interest, meaning your own associates, the people that you have access to. Then with those you have to start your work. And use what Bill has told us to do, like use visuals. And any other tools that had worked for you, that's what we have to do. I share with you because it has worked for me. Thank you.
Just going to lift the microphone up a bit. How does it go?
Maybe we should organize by height.
High text. Look at that. It's the highest it's been all week. Yeah, well, leading on from... Right. I'll just hold it.
We
I
should
think
be
we-
charging people like Rob for space value quality.
Using extra air.
Taxi.
Yeah, moving on from some of the points, especially inspired by what Jacob said this morning. I think we need to get short videos, positive money style videos, what we saw on Friday, illustrating the concepts very simply, in very short bursts, so that people can just click onto them, watch it for 2 minutes, and then go away and think about it. So I think that's really important. Very, very graphic explanations with lots of diagrams. And the other thing that I think that hasn't been mentioned yet is I think the focus on the language you use, because I don't think anybody likes taxation. No one likes to be taxed, and I think taxation has become synonymous with unfairness. So I think we need to be in this arena. We need to be using different words. This morning we heard the word ticket, which I liked, and also
Economic rent.
well, economic rent is something that would lead you to explore further, maybe. Yeah. Or I heard at lunchtime public value, which is other things which people can grasp, which has more kind of I don't know. It's kind of closer to the person. I think closer to nature. And also, I think it would be good. Well, we are already, but to focus on real life issues like environmental pollution, social injustice, not just in countries that have got extreme cases of inequality or injustice or pollution, but also at home as well, and how unfair our home system is. Yeah. But and all of the things said beforehand as well. I agree with them all.
Having agreed with previous speakers, I will also want to advance this way. One of the ways I want to use is what I tag as edutainment. You get young people who are more interested in entertainment, and you use the medium for entertainment in order to get them educated about their land rights. They are most vulnerable because one of the speakers said it's getting harder and harder for young people to secure affordable accommodation. And so if they are educated, I think that will serve as a medium for mobilizing the youth, who are the future leaders and the future generation, to understand these concepts and bring it to bear among whoever will become the future leaders. And by so doing, we'll be able to break the vicious cycle, because the whole cycle is unsustainable. Another way, like in Africa, I'm hoping to start building community land records, irrespective of whether government agree or disagree. Once the community has a land records of what they are doing, using modern technology like GIS and the rest that could be offloaded on the net, and it becomes public property. No one can just erase it overnight, and it will be there for as long as the net remains. Then we'll be pushing for tax and land reforms, mostly basically in Africa, where we are most vulnerable. Then we will look at simple methods of adding value to land and sharing the same value within an forgive me, I forgot what the last speaker just said. Looking at how natural boundary had already been established by these futures. Bioregions. Thank you, Elena. So by advancing such, and people are already learning simple methods, they may look archaic, but once we get that increased value over land and share the whole value that the community has created over land, I think we will be able to save the future generation. For this current generation, I still have my doubts.
Hello. I think the one thing that is self-evident is that we've got to reach far, far more higher number of people that we've currently done. And for that respect, I think I fully agree with Jacob about the use of social media. and in fact also with Bill and with Daniel about other ways that we've got to put in there to ensure that we reach a higher number. But one important view, and I say that mainly from my time in politics as well, is that I think one thing that we must do, we must give, we must provide a clear vision on what we are going to do with the collected rent. I think if people do not really understand that, or we're unclear about that, they're not going to accept it. And that applies, you know, that would depend on which country you're in as well. For example, in the UK, this can initially be to remove the unfair and unpopular council tax that currently exists. And then maybe that could be extended to a reduction in income tax. But we've got to have a very clear vision of how that's going, because people, they say, oh yeah, that's all okay. But if they do not understand how it's going to pan out, they will not accept it. And in fact, I was thinking of the difference in countries. In Mauritius, for example, I think that it would be probably best to use something like that to introduce a citizen's income, which will, again, create a much more fair society there.
How's that?
Yes, it's okay. Although I am not that young, I totally agree with the use of what technology has to offer us. You know, I think I find that very interesting, taking into account that there are positive and negative things about it. For me, the second point, which is very, very important, is to be positive and convinced of the message we are trying to convey. Because if we don't feel that, we won't be able to transfer the message. So that's very, very important. And there is a saying somewhere, if you don't find the solution, you are part of the problem. That's all I have to say.
I guess, okay. Right, I've had all the prescriptions that the various groups have given. On my own part, I want to be the guinea pig to test, because we want to use the practical experience. So hope, if you like, we will be like the strategic backcloth with which you will assess whether what solutions were coming up, the media, whatever. We are offering My Village as the practical means to test all this, to see that at the end of the day, what works and what won't work. We're starting with some of our funds, and we have some friends that would help us. Firstly, we've started discussions before I came here, but now we'll go beyond that. We'll keep you updated as to the stages we've taken, which experiment has worked, which one is not working, and why. Maybe that way others can find something to do. Just get the, what they call it, the box in case we die, you find a way of burying us.
Ollie, are you next? Yeah, just a minute. And they're all empty chairs, so now's your chance for your 1 minute.
I'm afraid to open the discussion about what land value taxation revenue should be used for in detail. But I think it is important that we emphasize that it should become to the benefit of people, all people, in more or less equal terms. And I agree with Gary that it is up to the government in the country concerned to decide, and to the people behind it, if it should be distributed as general citizens' dividend, or it should go to infrastructure, or it should go to this and to that. The most important thing is that we will not stop collecting land value to the public just because it has replaced ordinary taxes. We have to collect all the land values, and then we can discuss how should we use it.
Say your name, please.
Oh, I'm Jane McNabb. Thank you. Well, I love everybody's ideas, and I think they're all going to be excellent in everyone's contexts. For mine, I'm going to work on always positioning anything I do in relation to justice and equity, getting at the heart of the matter. I really like Jacob's social media campaign, and I was thinking about the age group that might suit, and yes, young people like my sons. But in Australia, the largest take-up rate on Facebook is actually retiring men, which is an interesting thing. And now, what else? I'm going to try and work on political parties. We have a couple in Australia. I don't know whether you know, you've all heard of Julian Assange, I take it. He's actually trying to run for Parliament from the Ecuadorian Embassy in London. Not sure it's going to work. But he started a WikiLeaks party, and of course their bottom line is justice and equity. So I'm going to try and get a bit closer to that. While I was here, Ema mentioned something to me, not in public, in private, that there's a lady in New Zealand called Deirdre who is trying to work on an opt-in, opt-out strategy, and I have heard people at Prosper mention that in Australia, and I think that's actually got some very interesting possibilities. So I actually might work on that academically. I'll see how that goes. I also really liked the idea of taking the government of South Africa to court, and I'm going to try and get some crowdfunding sorted out for the man that was here, to help pay the barristers' fees. I saw a song on YouTube a while back, I don't know whether you've all seen it, it was about free energy. I thought it was to do with the Occupy movement, actually. It occurs to me that if you want entertainment, why don't we come up with a song like that, an activist song? That's it. That'll do. That's a long list.
Andrew McLaren, who founded this school with his son, always used to say, keep it simple. If it's complicated, it's not true. Secondly, emphasize the right and the wrong. Location value is created by all, so it belongs to all. And the last thing is to find a way to explain justice in a way that carries through to all.
Please say your name when you are. Okay, my name is Eulalia. Just a very short, and talk about some mistake I've done during the last 8 years trying to explain land value tax. Whatever the person you are talking, whatever the ideology, the background, and whatever is, even they are absolutely disagree with your ideas or don't understand, just don't judge them. Treat with respect and hear the arguments. That's better than to shout each other, and that's much better. And maybe there is a tiny possibility that they hear you and listen your arguments. Anybody else with their 1 minute? Please come up now.
In 1996, Bill Vickery got the Nobel Prize for Economics, and Nick Thiemann and I were having a conference in Canada, and unfortunately he died on the way up there. Because I had a grand plan to say Bill Vickery was the first Canadian economist to get the Nobel Prize, but he was born there when he was 4 years old and moved to New York. So it's a bit of a dubious argument. This just came out, I just got it a little while ago. Lindy Davies of the Henry George Institute in New York has put together the Mason Gaffney Reader, Resolving Unsolvable Economic Problems. These are mostly essays that were published in the Georges Journal over the years, but it's good to have them consolidated in one publication. Some great stuff here, like Taking the Professor for a Ride, 18 answers to futilitarians and things like that. So that's a new text that's out for us. Wouldn't it be great if Mason Gaffney got nominated for the Nobel Prize? Even nominated would be good enough. But he's 90 years old, and you have to do it when they're alive. Thank you.
We can do it. We can nominate them now. What's
Sure,
the
but
step?
I have no influence with the Reichsbank. Do you?
No, but a lot of people get nominated. Like there's Kevin Annett in Canada. He's nominated by 3 different professors, I think, for the Nobel Prize. It's still helpful.
I had a plan, because they used to phone up Warren Samuels to ask who they should give the Nobel Prize to, but he died too a few years ago, so I'm running out of people to do it. I just throw it out, my minute's up.
Okay. Yay! Nobel Prize! We have 22 signers on the letter to the people of Egypt. If you did not sign and you want to sign, please sign it. Everybody's sitting on the one page. And now Julian had asked for a bit more than 1 minute, and he's prepared some of his thoughts for strategy.
Thank you. Of course, you don't need any more thoughts. You've already had quite enough. But there are 2 things that have occurred to me actually as we've been speaking. I'd like to add something to Daniel's actually, which was that yesterday you mentioned, or the day before, that you'd like some support from the West in campaigning against land grabs in Africa. And I think that's something that will be a useful strategy for the IU. Is that okay?
Yes, that's correct.
And I think that would, it's not only is that an ethically correct thing to do, but I think it would increase our credibility in Africa and other places, and would provide opportunities in this country and elsewhere to explain land value taxation. So that's one that's occurred to me. The other one is to do with what to do with the revenue, and I think that we should be very specific about this, and I've tried to do some very simple spreadsheet modelling about the impact of replacing council tax with LVT on households of different types with different ownership structures, and I think it needs to be done properly by somebody with clout, and I've already approached the IU about that last a year or 2 ago, but I really think it's something that somehow or other we must find a way of doing. However, what I really want to talk about is actually what's an incredibly simple idea, but one which just takes me a moment to explain. And it's something that could be put into operation very easily. I could put it into operation myself entirely on my own, or I could get together a small group of friends to do it, or it's possible that the IU might want to sponsor something like this, which is why I'm announcing it now before doing anything else. And the idea came to me in January when David Triggs organised a meeting here with Alana and Rajesh and Adam from the Share the World's Resources campaign. And several things occurred to me about that. One was that it was another one of these wonderful short, brief titles that really works. And the second thing that occurred to me was that in their 10-point plan, there was no mention at that time of any sort of Georgist activities, whereas I thought that name would lead you to that. But the most important thing is that when I spoke to them afterwards and said, are you thinking of including any Georgist ideas? Then they said, yes, we're sympathetic to them, we're thinking of including them in the future, it's just not amongst our top 10 priorities. And I thought, there are a lot of people out there for whom this is of interest, but not amongst their top 10 priorities. And is that a group of people and a group of organisations that we could make links with? So the way that I see the organisations that we're involved in, the International Union, the organisation they're involved in, share the world's resources, the Council of Economic Justice, all of these organisations as being essentially umbrella organisations under which each of us, with our slightly different views, can shelter and come together for that sort of fellowship and comradeship that you were talking about. But there's another way, which is what I'd like to suggest, which is more of a franchising model. So imagine that we had a phrase that we all really liked. And it might be something like, share the Earth's resources, but that's too closely associated with the other folk. Or it might be, the Earth belongs to everybody, but that's too closely associated with the Earth's rights institute. But there might be a phrase that we could come up with that we could use for this purpose. My current thought is something like towards equal shares of the Earth. But it doesn't matter what it is. The more people involved, the better we'll come up with an idea. But the idea is that whoever set this up would franchise it, not financially. But we could put this up on a website with a logo and a strapline and say, anybody who shares this fundamental belief, that is to say that we as an organisation or as an individual are working towards a world in which the Earth's resources are shared equally amongst all, that anybody who signs up to that is invited to take the logo, put it on their website, in the expectation that any organisation that displays this logo can reasonably expect that other organisations displaying the logo could be called on for at least moral support whenever they are doing things that fits within that area. So, for example, going back to share the world's resources, although the Georgism thing isn't part of that, I think that they would sign up to having that logo on their, possibly on their, I mean, if we could, possibly on their publications and websites. I hope that organisations in the Coalition for Economic Justice would do so. I hope the IU would do so. But then the real power comes, once we've got the beginnings of that, is do you think that other organisations, like Oxfam, for example, if we have contacts and people we know, whether we could persuade them to sign up for it? Because I think that way we could go wide with organisations with a relatively simple message and almost no effort. It's just a design of an agreement on words, design of a logo, setting up a website, and then let it organise itself. Okay.
I think we have the phrase, if we agree to it, it's the last statement in the Declaration. The earth is the birthright of all people. It's the IU Declaration. That might work.
I thought those were some really great ideas that are quite novel, actually. And I've been thinking about the logo idea for a while for the reason that I believe that we need a marketing strategy. We need some symbols that when people see them, they're reminded of our ideas. And, I thought a lot about this, and I don't have any suggestions when it comes to names specifically, but I've thought about it in terms of a logo, and a logo that would generally appease all the Georgist organizations, something like the free trade logo that you see on candy bars. Not a logo that necessarily replaces any organization's existing logo, but one that associates them with an already existing brand or idea or way of doing things. And I have a collection of logo ideas, so rough sketches and some that have been generated on the computer for doing this, and the idea was just to make them generally amenable to all the organizations. So I think that would be one good strategy moving forward. Thanks.